observation. Typically, superheroes and villains are not married. I mean, there are exceptions, but you have to be looking for those exceptions. And often you'll find that the fact that that man had a wife is part of the reason he became ultimately a superhero or a villain. I wrote down a few examples. So recently I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 1 again. And then I remembered, oh yeah, Drax. His whole story, and he openly talks about it, is that his wife and his daughter were murdered. So he was married, and when he stopped being married, he ultimately, by default, became this superhero by the time he gets to Guardians of the Galaxy. So Drax is an example. There's Punisher. You know, I saw the original, well, not the 1990 something version, but there was one that came out in the early 2000s. What was the name? Thomas Jane, I think was the actor. That one. Punisher. The whole concept, his family is murdered. His wife and kids are murdered. And so he was married. He becomes a widow, and now he becomes a superhero. Another one, I also recently watched Spider-Man 2 again. I really like Spider-Man 2. The first Spider-Man 2 is what I'm talking about right now, with Doc Ock in it. And I hadn't watched it in years. This was like my third time to see it. And I was watching it with my son, and I said, that's weird. I don't remember Doc Ock being married. That's weird. Villains and superheroes, they don't typically aren't married. And then I realized, oh yeah, she dies. And when she dies, he becomes this super villain. What's another example? Hawkeye in Marvel. I mean, whether she died or not, you know, you've seen Endgame, right? You know how still it's that same way of thinking. Even if you are married, is your wife still gonna end up being there? Well, you've seen Endgame, you know what I'm talking about. Mr. Freeze. Now, granted, that's one of the Batman movies no one really likes to talk about. For me, I didn't have a problem with, was it Batman Forever? Was that the one with Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger? I didn't have a problem with the movie. I get it. It's not the same as some of the best ones. It's more of a novelty one, but I still enjoyed it. If you enjoy a movie, by default, who cares about anybody else? If you like the movie, I liked it. In the movie, Mr. Freeze, the whole concept is he's trying to save his wife by getting this chemical, whatever it is. So ultimately, what I'm presenting to you is when there is a superhero or a supervillain, it's like you can't also be married. Your wife has to die ultimately to some degree. Iron Man. See, I didn't even think about that. Have you seen? But when you keep up with it, it's always the same predictable thing. It's like back in the 80s, especially 80s and 90s, when you looked at family sitcoms, it was actually becoming rare that the mom was in the picture. She was always dead. Like immediately, I'm thinking of Full House. You know, Danny Tanner. He's a widow, so he gets his friend and his brother-in-law to move in the house because the mom is dead. There was like 13 shows, I think, from in the 80s and 90s that were very popular, and it was the mom wasn't alive, and so that's a weird, specifically weird thing that we saw in so many popular sitcoms during all that time. And it's funny because I think I've been aware of this for a while, and I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to put a link in the description, but a lot of you are not aware that this channel was never designed as supposed to be about hair loss or mentoring young men about masculinity. That was never the plan. I just wanted to make fun videos to entertain people. So when this video really started, I had a superhero series called Jackman, which my son at the time was 4, and now he's turning 9 next month, but he was 4. We made 22 episodes, and just imagine, I sing and play guitar and write songs, so I created the theme song. A lot of the episodes had a specifically written song for the action sequence. You know, I'm editing these videos, making the music. I played the villain, my son played the hero, the superhero. And I think it was episode 4 of Jackman, and I'll put the link on here so you can watch it. I revealed that I had a wife, and I even said to the camera, I said, that's strange. Usually super villains aren't married, but I am. And so my wife was even in that specific one, and she was a super villain. So I'll put that in there. So I also had another series I did, which I think had like 28 episodes, called Uncle Nick's Enchanted Forest, where I was basically like an outdoors Mr. Rogers, basically. These shows were intended for kids to watch. The series didn't take off, neither of them. I spent so many hours writing and directing and filming and editing these things. The free market decided, nope, we're not going to support it. What does the free market support? Am I going bald? Shaved head, beard. That's the thing that the free market is obsessed with. So that's why I have to make this. See, every once in a while I have to have a little bit of fun and make a video about something else that's not about about balding or fearing that you might. So I understand no one's really going to watch this video because they want me to talk about that thing that they're obsessed with. But I think it's interesting, and I don't think people are really talking about this, that superheroes can't stay married. Not because they're divorced, but because their wife is going to end up dying, or maybe they're going to end up dying. But you cannot be happily married and be a superhero or a supervillain. That's not to say you're divorced. No, it's death will separate you if you're married, whether it's you or whether you're your wife. That's like the rule. Otherwise, you're not married. It's really weird. Is anyone talking about this? I'm talking about this. Leave your comments below. And also, if you want to have some fun, click that link. You'll see one of the many episodes I made of my superhero series called Jackman. All right, comments right there.